Over the last few decades, one of the most popular tabletop games that you can find at game shops and tournaments is Warhammer 40k, an offshoot of the Warhammer Fantasy, or vice versa. Uh, a grimdark sci-fi world of demons and spaceships, very complicated for even the layman. However, because it's been so popular, there's all kinds of info going around, and I want to see if my friend Zach.
Yeah, my friend. Yeah,
There you go.
I'm an expert at 40 hammer Ks. I'll have you know.
Yes. And what of Warhammer 40k have you seen or consumed?
I know there's orcs. I know there's undead people. I know there's space marines.
Perfect.
And
yes.
rat people.
Absolutely. So you mentioned orcs. Let's just start with the simplest question. How do you spell orcs?
I mean, typically you spell orc with a O-R-C. That's how you spell it, with an or and then apostrophe S if you wanted to use plural.
As
Orcs.
Possessive orcs.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yes. Let's start with the basics.
Basics, like
Who's the emperor?
I think he's a dude that's a god, I think. And he's also undead?
Sure.
And the Space Marines love him a lot.
Why do the Space Marines love him so much?
Because he's a kick-ass dude. He's a good emperor, I think.
Very good emperor.
Yeah.
He's currently in command of the Imperium. I'll give you that one for free.
For free? Awesome.
The Imperium.
The
of
Imperium.
Man, right?
Yeah. The High Command.
Nuts.
Yeah.
So if he's a god, why are there so many problems facing the Imperium in Warhammer 40k?
Well, you see, I think it has to do with the orcs and something like, I don't know, there's like chaos, then there's like undead lich people, and then there's like, I guess the rat people taking effect somewhere.
Right.
So there's like multiple factions, and I guess like as an empire you gotta kind of squash those warring factions.
Is it just the Space Marines that love the Emperor?
I think the undead people love him too.
Because he's
Is that a
also
faction?
undead?
Yeah, he's like a lich or something, right?
Sure. So if the undead like the Emperor, why don't the undead just team up with humans?
It's kind of like a god thing, you know what I mean? Like Christianity interprets the Bible one way, and Catholicism interprets the Bible the other way. It's like the undead people interpret the Emperor's message one way, and the Space Marines interpret it the other way. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they're like.
But why don't they just ask him what he thinks? The Emperor.
Well, it's because that's rude. You know, he's like this all-knowing, powerful guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to question his authority. He's the Emperor.
Sure.
I forgot to mention that heresy's involved a lot.
Right.
Everyone's a heretic, I think.
Sure.
Even the Space Marines.
That sometimes does happen, actually.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Points.
But like, if the Emperor is just the god, why not just worship the god? I mean, problems we face with heresy and all that today is that people don't think there is a god, but if he's just walking around.
Well, I think it's like, again, it just has to do with like how they interpret his message, you know. And like maybe there's like a power hierarchy, like maybe the undead people are like the noble class, and like the Space Marines are the lowly like worker ants, drones sent for slaughter.
Sure, yeah. So the Space Marines are like the lowest faction in Imperium society.
Yeah, I'd think so. Comparatively to the undead people, yeah.
Right. And so you mentioned heresy and how they interpret the Emperor's will. So they also worship the Emperor, just like a different aspect of him. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. And so does that mean it's because worship a different aspect of them. Are the heretics equally as good in some cases as the Imperium?
Yeah, I guess it depends. I mean, I guess not all heretics, right? Hashtag not all heretics.
Hashtag thin adamantine line, yes.
Yeah, like, I'm sure there's like a heretic that did something, or like they were accused of being a heretic, but they did something in the benefit of the Imperium, right?
Yeah, that does happen quite a lot, actually. And so who goes around yelling that people are heretics?
I think everyone.
Everyone
Literally,
just tells
yeah.
everyone else the heretics?
Except for the rat people and the orcs. I think they just don't give a shit about any of that. They're just like pirates or thieves or bandits or undead or something.
Yeah. So, you mentioned the rat people. What can you tell me about them in the Warhammer 40k universe?
I think they're zombies. I don't know. I think they're pre-40 Hammer K, but they probably still exist. I mean, it makes sense. I don't know.
The universe is a big place.
Yeah, exactly.
How big? Speaking of which, how big is the Imperium?
Probably a couple million planets.
A couple million planets?
Yeah, a couple million people, maybe.
So if it's a couple million people or a couple million planets?
Yeah, let's say planets.
Alright. So if it's an empire of a couple million planets, why can't they just take care of the rat people?
Maybe the rat people are like, they're like undead. And they're also, maybe they're parasites or like were-rat people, like it's a virus of some kind that originated from a species, I guess.
Gotcha. And same with the orcs. They just reproduce a bunch, or
yeah, maybe. I think they're yeah, that makes sense. They just reproduce a whole bunch. They're they have their own planet or their own community that, maybe on the fringes of the Empire or Imperium. They're kind of like on the outskirts of stuff.
Gotcha. Are there any other factions that the Imperium has to deal with?
See, the only reason I know as much as I do is because I talked to Revi. Something about Chaos Agents? Are they like Chaos Worshippers or something?
Sure. What do Chaos Worshippers worship if they Chaos Worshippers?
Obviously Chaos, duh. Fucking stupid.
Just the concept of Chaos, or is there like something silly like Chaos Gods?
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably Chaos Gods, right? Because if the Imperium is like law and order and like, I wouldn't necessarily say justice, but like if it's law and order and like maintaining that, then the Chaos people would or worship things that weren't the Imperium and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Cool. So, have you ever heard of? You mentioned the rat people, who I'll just give you their name, the Skaven.
The Skaven. Okay, cool.
The Skaven.
That sounds fun.
I know who you're talking about. Yes. And the orcs. Have you heard of factions such as the Eldar?
Excuse me?
The Eldar.
The elbow? I beg your pardon?
The Eldar.
Nope. Never heard of them at all. They sound...
Have you heard of something called Space Elves?
Space Elves, yes. Those exist. They're elves and they're in space. That's about it.
Are they related to the Eldar in any way?
No, I don't think so.
Have you heard of the Tau? As in T-A-U.
No, never heard of those guys.
Do they exist in Warhammer 40k?
Sure. Let's say yeah. That's plausible. Maybe they're shacking it up with the elves or the Chaos Boys.
Gotcha. So, Space Elves. What are they all about?
Well, in fantasy and in like Pathfinder and D&D and stuff, elves are all about like maintaining the balance between nature and stuff.
Right.
So maybe they're just doing that in space.
Gotcha. So they're just making sure the universe stays in balance.
Yeah, and maybe they fucking hate everyone, or maybe they only hate the undead people, or maybe they only hate like the Chaos Agents or the Chaos Worshipping Anarchist people. It's really hard to tell. Warhammer 40k is kind of complicated and really hard to get into, so
it's a little complicated at times.
And honestly, as soon as you guys start talking about it, I just kind of turn my brain off and bits and pieces kind of flood in. So.
Gotcha. So here's a good question for Warhammer 40k. Who are the good guys?
I want to say the Imperium, but it seems like when you guys talk about it, no one's the good guys. Like, they're all selfish assholes, and they all just want to do the things that they think is the right thing, but it's not really the right thing, because it causes, like, death and destruction and stuff.
Gotcha. Alright. That's
like, everyone's just in the wrong. Yeah, is that a good answer? I think I'm nailing this, honestly.
You know what? You know more than I expected.
Yeah, I surprised myself.
Again, going back to the Space Marines, because they are the iconic sort of poster boys for...
Yeah, they had a game on the Xbox 360.
They did. It was fun, too. Speaking of that game...
Never played it.
No. Speaking of that game, are all Space Marines the same?
Like, are they clones? Like, what do you mean?
No, I mean, like, is the organization of
same?
Space Marines one cohesive military unit?
I mean, if they weren't, that'd be dumb, right?
That would be really dumb. But let's just, for shits and giggles, assume that each one has its own specific chapter.
Like the Brotherhood of Steel on Fallout 3 or 4.
Exactly right. Just like the Brotherhood of Steel and their different chapters.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But in that case, I have a few names of Space Marine chapters that from their names, I just want you to tell me what you know of them.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Hit me with your best shot.
What are the Ultramarines all about?
Ah, dude, they give plus ultra effort into everything they do. They're like Space Marines, but ultra.
Plus ultra.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. And do you remember what color they typically use on the armor? You mentioned the video game.
Yeah.
Warhammer 40k Ultramarine, I believe is what it was called.
Space. I know Space Marines come in varying colors. I know like some are blue and maybe some are red, maybe some are green. Let's call ultras. Let's call them purple. They're purple.
Purple.
Yeah, dude.
All right, perfect.
Maybe white, but who knows?
This one's kind of a given when it comes to asking what color they are. The Black Templars.
Oh, that's easy. They're black and white.
Gotcha. And do you know what they're all about?
Did you say Templars?
Black Templars.
The Black Templars. They may hold some type of religious values.
One or two.
A few here and there. They may consider themselves to be like they act by some code, like Knights would, like Templars would.
Gotcha. Do any of the other Space Marine chapters act with a code, or is it just?
I'm sure they have, like, because when you think about a Marine, you think of Semper Fi and all those other things.
That is
core
Space
or Army and Marine family and what have you. So maybe Space Marines are kind of like that, where they all kind of have their own code. Like the regular plain chapter Marines have their standard code, and then the Ultras and the Black Templars have a more specific code of arms or conduct that they follow.
Gotcha. Alright. And what about the Salamanders?
Maybe they're fire based. Because when I think of Salamander, I think of the cooking, the open fire thing that they have in kitchens, and also lore wise in fantasy. The salamander represents fire and flame, so maybe they're red or orange or just orange, red, and yellow.
Sure. And finally, let's see, which one do I want to use? How about the White Scars?
The White Scars. Well, their armor's probably white. and they got a whole bunch of battle scars on their armor.
Alright. Is there
And that's
anything
why they're called the White Scars.
Alright, gotcha. Have you ever heard of a thing in Warhammer 40k related to Space Marines called a Primarch, by chance?
No. What is that?
Well, you're the one answering the question.
Oh, yeah, of course. A Primarch.
I'm relying on
you
your
said
expertise
arc?
here.
They're a leader of some kind, maybe. Of religious... Maybe they're a religious... Yeah, they're a religious leader. That's what they are.
Gotcha. And so much like the Emperor, they're around making sure Space Marines are doing what they should be doing, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Are the Space Marines just like average dudes in armor, or is there anything special about them?
I think there's... Maybe they got some cyborg bits. I'm sure they got some robot bits, because that armor looks really heavy.
It does look very heavy.
So they're probably got some type of super soldier serum pumped into their veins, and it's like the armor and their weapon. I think they have like a chainsaw sword too, or something.
They do have a chainsaw sword.
Yeah, my friend played a lot of Space Marines and the video game, and he also talked a lot about it. I mean, all of you kind of do. So it's like I pick up pieces whether I want to or not.
Well, you've picked up a lot, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And so are Space Marines like the main military faction of the Imperium?
Maybe. Yeah. You know what? Yeah. Yeah. They're the main guys. They're the only. I mean, sure, you probably got some tanks and some pilots and stuff, but like, those are the ground forces. You know, the boots on the ground.
Gotcha.
Or in the spaceship, wherever.
Gotcha. Have you ever heard of an organization called the Sisters of Battle?
Like, are they just like female Space Marines?
You could say that.
I mean, I've never heard of them, but I can take a stab at it. You know, I feel like if the Sisters of Battle, they're like, maybe they have a brother unit, you know, like a unit that they co-opt with, not necessarily like a male female kind of thing, but just like units they do battle with. They could be, you know, maybe they represent like the Valkyries of like Norse lore or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
When you think of like Sisters of Battle, you think, I don't know. Personally, that's what comes to my head anyway.
Gotcha. Have you ever heard of an organization called the Adeptus Mechanicus?
No, sorry. I never heard of that, actually. But based on their name, they abduct machines.
Gotcha.
Right? Like, they take machines and maybe they worship them, or maybe they like apply them to their body. And
worshipping machines would be silly, Zach.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. This whole universe seems silly to me.
Gotcha. So, have you ever heard of something called the Warp, as in W-A-R-P?
No. I feel like anytime you talk about warp in like sci-fi, it's like they're you know, traveling through a wormhole or like light speed or what have you.
It is kind of like that in Warhammer 40k. Is there anything in the warp, or is it just like that's the highway to where you need to go?
That's probably just the highway that you need to go. Maybe there was like a warp event. You kind of discovered how warping works, you know. Now you kind of warp everywhere.
Just kind of warp all over the place.
Yeah, you just warp
Carefree.
here and there. Yeah, carefree, without a, you know, who cares? You're warping, you know?
Yeah, you're warping.
Just warping around, having a good time with your fellow Marines. Yeah.
So, Warhammer's kind of known for, along with its grimdark, no one's the good guy kind of universe, it also is known for scale, if that makes sense.
Like large scale?
Yeah, exactly. How, you know spaceships, they exist in Warhammer 40k.
Yeah.
How big typically are they?
Oh man, they're I know they're bigger than the average sci-fi ship. You know what I mean? Like they're like
right.
a few instances larger than, say, like a Farscape or a Firefly or a Star Wars Destroyer or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they're like maybe 50 times larger than like a Star Destroyer or something like that.
Pretty big.
Yeah. So they're pretty big, but they're not like a planet big, you know.
Right.
They're kind of big. They're bigger than the average bear.
And it depends on the faction, I'm assuming.
Yeah. The Abductus Mechanicus boys probably got like a bigger ships.
They got some big ships.
Yeah, they worship the mechanical stuff, so I don't think they do. I don't know. I'm not saying like with any certainty that they worship mechanical stuff or they abduct mechanical things from other people, but when you got abduct and mechanical in your name, you kind of...
Well, it's adept. But
yeah, adept? Is that...
Yeah, adeptus. It's Latin.
So they're adept at maintaining and upkeeping mechanical stuff. Okay.
Although you bring up a good point when it comes to abducting technology. Is that typically how the Imperium operates? Is it's like takes new ideas in and repurposes them for their own use?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they're not like the orc. I feel like the orcs are more ragtag, and they kind of just like they're kind of like Pathfinder or Starfinder goblins. They just put duct tape on stuff and see if it works. That's how the orcs are. But with the Imperium, there's probably like they're like, oh, I like this technology the elves are implementing. Maybe there's something I can do to make it Imperium style, you know?
Right. They're always trying to stay at like the cutting edge of technology.
Yeah, they don't, you know, they don't want to. They got a lot of wars and stuff. They got a whole bunch of stuff to maintain as an empire, so they can't really just fall behind technology-wise.
No, you can't fall behind technology-wise. That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, that'd be stupid.
Yes. So speaking of technology, and what's the most? It's often used in Warhammer 40k as a quote, but what's the most common resource that the Emperor has at his disposal in the galaxy?
Resource. I guess people. People's like. Would you consider people a resource?
I would, and I think the Emperor would too.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he consider. I mean, you know, maybe he's a good guy, but
I don't know. From everything we've been talking about, it seems like if he's alive and walking around, that he wouldn't stand for this if he was a good guy.
Yeah. We also discussed previously that, like, everyone's the bad guy, so maybe he thinks he's a good guy and he's doing good things, and the people that love him think he's doing a good thing. But, like, maybe he's just an asshole. And he's like, fuck you, you're a pawn. Get in there and die for me. You know.
Sure. Have you ever heard of something called the Traitor Legions?
The Traitor I know, but from what I gather, they're a legion of soldiers, and they're traitors.
Why would they betray a living god?
You know, I guess it's like, hey, we don't think you're a living god, but a man that's like, maybe technology makes them seem like, because, you know, like, there's this quote, like, magic's just a really advanced technology, you know?
Right.
So maybe that's what they're like, hey, you're not using magic, or you're not really special, you're just using this really advanced technology. And we don't think you're... Yeah, you're not a god, you're just a feeble man.
So, where does the Emperor come from?
Well, I imagine from a family, right? Like there's a royal family. Or, you know, maybe he...
emperors.
Yeah, like, or maybe, like, he was a military man, like a general or something, and then he's like, he threw a coup, and now he's the general of the world, the whole entire system, and I guess they just call him emperor.
Sure. So he just, like, sort of took over everything.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna take over everything, and this is my stuff now, and you guys can call me the emperor. So like Palpatine, you know, from Star Wars. Like he was a part of the Senate. As we know,
Palpatine was like a really good dude too.
Yeah, sure. He had good intentions, right?
Sure, you know. And he comes from Earth, right? The Emperor.
The Emperor? Yeah, I mean, I think the Imperium's mostly are all humans, right? Like they're all humans. They're all.
Are they?
Yeah, I think so. Like even if you're undead and you're like you were human, I think you're human. Talking about those guys that are above the super marines.
Sure. Do you know what those undead are called? The ones that are above the supermarines and hold
not a single,
not Society.
Single clue. Maybe they're priests or something. Maybe
sure.
they got maybe they're like saints or like angels. Or maybe they're maybe they're called demons sometimes. Like when they're not looking, the space marines like whisper under their breath, something shitty.
Gotcha. And is life in the Imperium for humans primarily good?
Yeah. They're all like the space marines are humans, and like maybe the emperor's human, and like so like they're that's the main race, I think, of the Imperium. Right. So I'd imagine it'd be good. I'd suck if it wasn't, but
yeah. Even though there's like you mentioned the elves and the orcs and all that, it's still just humans in the Imperium.
Yeah, I mean, the orcs aren't in the Imperium, right? Because they're bandits and pirates and stuff, and the elves, they're like, we're our own faction, guys. We don't really like we're part of like the pact worlds or what have you, but like we're our own deal. Like, we do trades and stuff, but we're not a part of the Imperium.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I can't really think of any more questions for you at the moment. I feel like I've learned everything about Warhammer 40k.
Yeah. I'm glad I was able to teach you everything I know about Warhammer 40k.
Perfect. If you have a topic that anyone watching wants discussed, just let us know in the comments.
Yeah, or tweet at us at the forum thread.